Hello, Tech Pros, episode 226.
Discipline is the key that drives this whole engine. Don't rely on motivation. I've made that mistake before, but motivation's fleeting.
Welcome to the podcast where every day of the week we publish another conversation exploring the anxieties, challenges, and opportunities that technical professionals and entrepreneurs face when building their career, building their products, and building their business. There are a lot of shows that focus on the nuts and bolts of technology, but this podcast is not one of them. This is about the people behind the tech industry and the mindsets and skill sets they developed that led to their success. You can learn more about this podcast and our guests at hellotechpros.com, and I invite you to read my personal story of overcoming social anxiety at anxietynerd.com. All right, let's get started. Hello, Tech Pros. This is Chad Bostic, and I'm excited to introduce our featured guest today, Nathan Lieberman. Happy Tuesday, Nate.
Happy Tuesday, Chad. Thanks for having me on the show. Really excited and ready to get going.
All right, man. Are you prepared to be productive?
Oh, always productive, man. Me and Chad, he's doing a 7-day week podcast. I'm all over the place. Well, we got lots of good stuff this episode.
We are going to productivity-atize the audience like no one has ever heard before.
I've never even heard that word before, but I'm excited.
I just made it up. I'm not sure.
Well, it's great. I'm writing it down.
A mechanical engineer and product designer turned traveler, Nathan Lieberman now hosts his own podcast called Oyster World Radio that broadcasts his escape from the corporate grind. And I know a lot of my audience is trying to do that right now, dude. Through his vast array of experiences ranging from networking, investing, martial arts, engineering, travel, storytelling, and business, Nate has cracked the code on how to juggle multiple projects and perform at the highest levels. Dude, that is such an amazing, inspirational bio, and I can't wait to... I don't know that we have time in a 30-minute episode to get into all of those things, like all of the martial arts and storytelling that you're doing at the same time. Maybe you're like telling stories about your... I don't know, but we're going to get into it. First of all, what's the Oyster World Radio? Where did you come up with that name, and what's it all about?
Oh, so Oyster World is a small startup that I started with a couple friends from college and my sister. And it's a travel startup where we help educate travelers to really maximize their trips by educating them in the culture that they're going to be visiting and how to be respectful and, you know, what things to look out for, as well what things to enjoy that are different from American culture. So we really help people maximize their trips, and the name is actually something that my sister, you know, those are eureka moments. We were actually at a happy hour after work where all great entrepreneurship ideas start, happy hours at work. Right. And she walked back from the bar and it's like, the world is your oyster. So we're like, wait, we can do something with that. And it slowly conceptualized and changed into these two worlds of Oyster World, where to us, that means that we are making the world our oyster. We are maximizing our time here on Earth and just taking all of the world in all of its glory, basically.
Man, I love it. I love that. Just the mission statement that you have for yourself. You know, it resonates really strongly. Like it's coming out of your voice. I can hear the emotion in your voice, dude. It's like, yeah, man, it's what it's all about. It's productivity for the sake of productivity and just getting more products complete and done and making those project managers happy. That's okay. Like that's cool. But like to actually have the goal of to make the world your oyster by being highly productive, that is inspirational. That's amazing.
Yeah, and I think that's the name of the game. We only have so much time here on Earth, and there's so much that we can do besides work, and there's so many other experiences that we can experience as humans and in this age of humanity that, you know, we got to take advantage of everything and really grow as well-rounded beings.
Awesome, dude. So let me ask you a question that's maybe takes you back a little bit to where you weren't in the state of getting it all done. So the question I ask all the guests on Productivity Tuesday is, tell me about a time in your life or your business or your career or what have you, where you were completely unproductive and you weren't getting things done and you weren't meeting your goals and you were feeling kind of blah about the situation. And then we'll go through, you know, we'll have a conversation about what turned it around and how you got to where you are today.
So The story I like to tell people is one that probably a lot of your listeners can resonate with is I was in college at the time and I was about to graduate, so I was doing job search. There was a lot of, in mechanical engineering, there's a final project. So I was a design project that we had to do. I was starting to get this entrepreneurship thing on track. There was a lot of things just flooding into my life all of a sudden. I came from this naive college student to, oh God, the real world is like right there and about to come crashing down on top of me. Right. And so I'm looking at like my calendar and things and turned around, sat on my couch and turned on Netflix. And I think Netflix has been the bane of a lot of people, but the thing behind it was that it was overwhelming. It was the emotions behind it of, wow, like I may fail. Like I'm trying to do all these things. I'm going to have to put myself out there. I'm trying to take a path that's a little less traveled. And it was literally stopped me in my tracks. Stopped me in my tracks to the point where I'm like, I can't handle it. And I had to escape through the next greatest show. Right. So I think a lot of people can kind of resonate with that and trying to get over that entrepreneur mindset or the fact that you're not good enough is really the hardest obstacle that's standing between you and your dreams and your productivity and moving forward in the career that you want to.
Dude, I so resonate with that. And I know many of my listeners are because I just I published a couple of episodes within the last few weeks about the anxiety of imposter syndrome and the anxiety of starting your first business and what's it like to be an entrepreneur and how you find that motivation to like get over the hump and get started. So what did it specifically feel like to you when you were sitting down like, dude, I have to crash. I have to watch Netflix. I don't want to deal with this like hashtag grown up real life, man problems, adult problems. What did it feel like to you to know that you were going to have to figure this out like on your own, like you were going to have to do this stuff and you didn't want to face it?
Yeah, it's when I really started to turn around. Basically, what I was feeling, I'll go back to your question. What I was feeling was just like the weight of the world on your shoulders, basically, or just that's impossible. Like no one in my family has done this before, or this online business world and podcasting is completely new. What I was going to try to do with travel hasn't been seen before. And it just seems like this daunting task, that just immobilizes you with fear and anxiety. Am I good enough? You start questioning and doubting your own passion. Should I just go get a job and work 40 years and retire? It seems to work for everyone else. Is mediocrity good enough? And luckily enough for the people that can break through that, sometimes it takes certain situations. It takes like a point where you finally reach a breakthrough. And the most important part, especially for all of your listeners, is to get into the game. And that's true for everything that you do, whether it's you want to run a marathon, you want to join martial arts, you want to start traveling. You have to get into the game, put some chips down. Basically put your skin in the game. And I know when we were talking a little bit before the show, that was for podcasting, and that was the same for both you and me, was to get into the game and start with the smallest speck of forward progression and momentum and just ride that wave, because that thing, even though it's so small, can break through all of those anxiety barriers that you put in front of yourself. So to get through that crushing moment for me where you're like, God, I can't do this. I'm just going to watch Narcos, which is a great show. Don't get me wrong. Love me some Narcos. But you just have to like prick the surface and ride that momentum all the way through, because once you start, you put that first foot forward, the second foot's going to come right behind it, and then the third, and then the fourth, and then all of a sudden you're in the 200s of shows like our boy Chad here, and off and running with sponsors. It's crazy what momentum can do.
Well, you nailed it for me just a second ago when you were like, the most important part is to get into the game, not to pick on my friends, but I had this individual that I worked with a while back, who, in the software development space, in the IT space, right? We see a lot of quirky individuals. Chad being the king of the quirkiness, right? So this individual was just as quirky as I am, and we were at lunch talking, a big group of us talking about what was new in our life, and there was kind of a awkward silence for a while as everybody was digesting their enchiladas, and he looked up and said, "So I started learning Kung Fu now." And we were like, "Really? Dude, this is amazing." That's
amazing.
Yeah, this is amazing because we're all nerds, and because, we watch The Matrix, and you plug in a USB port in the back of your head, and it's like, dude, I know Kung Fu. And so we were like, wow, that's amazing. Like, how'd you get started and whatnot? And he started talking about all these different styles, like this kick and this spin and this grapple, and like how it functionally works. And we're like, okay, that's pretty cool, man. Good for you. And I said, so where do you go? And he said, I'm sorry. I said, where do you go to do it? Like, is there a dojo around here? Like, how do you sign up? Because I know you're living downtown Oklahoma City, and I haven't heard of like a Kung Fu master down here. Like, that would be cool. I would love to just drop by and check out the place. And he said, well, I don't have a dojo that I go to. I said, well, how are you learning it? He said, well, I checked out a book from the library. It's like, oh my God, we just spent like 20 minutes talking about this guy learning Kung Fu, but he's not learning Kung Fu, he's reading Kung Fu out of a book. And I see so many people that are doing the same thing in life and business. They're watching other people's stories, they're listening to other people's podcasts, they're studying how to start their own business, but they're not doing it, man. You got to get out there and get in the game.
Yeah, and there's something to be said, like at least he picked up the book and started reading, which is a great first step. But the action of actually, that's like learning about the game, like you said. It's like learning the rules of football, but not playing football, or like learning how to throw a fastball, but not actually throwing a fastball. You're not going to, that's not going to create momentum. And a lot of people get stuck in productivity because there's so much information out there. There's podcasts, there's blogs, there's all kinds of websites. You have access to every piece of information imaginable and every person imaginable, but none of that, a lot of that is not actionable. And it's the actions that create the progress and the movement towards your dreams. It's not, you can listen to 10,000 hours of Tim Ferriss, but you're not going to have a 4-hour work week unless you go out and do something about it.
Right.
So I think that's another pitfall, especially in productivity, is that we try to soak in everything when you and I both know that it's impossible to soak in everything. And most of it is going to go right out the window anyway. You listen to a podcast, goes one in ear, one out, in one ear and one, I can't say anything, in one ear and out the other. And then it's gone, and you didn't take any action on it because it's not relevant to your life right now. So it needs to be a healthy balance of action and learning, and that's where the real progress starts and keeps moving and building forward.
So before you got started, when you were at the stage when you were an entrepreneur and you were like, dude, I can't face this, I got to watch Netflix, were you consuming a lot of entrepreneurship content? Like, were you listening to a lot of podcasts? Were you reading a lot of books?
Yeah.
What did that look like at the beginning?
At the very beginning, I was taking an entrepreneurship minor at Ohio State University, and that was kind of I was soaking in and getting the idea. And then, you're right, then I started to turn and start my own education through podcasts, learning, talking to people, hearing their stories, trying to just figure out the whole scene. And I think looking back, I did that exact pitfall. I took in too much, and the questions I was asking weren't relevant to me at the time. And I think that's one of the reasons that stopped me. Is like, I have no idea what this dude's talking about. Like this is complete nonsense to me. And because I wasn't ready for it. I wasn't ready for that teaching, that lesson. And that not knowing, that unknown, was one of the biggest crippling factors, because, you like to know what you're doing. You like to be able to talk the talk and walk the walk. But at the beginning of anything, you know nothing and you have to take in the pieces of information that are relevant to you right now so that you can act on them right now.
Yeah, I was very similar to you. I was in the same situation where I was consuming an inordinate, I can't speak either. Okay, so we're gonna have this is non-English for English learners.
Hey,
I don't know what
tech
this
guys.
is. We're tech guys,
tech guys for a reason.
Oh my gosh, forgive me. I was consuming a heck of a lot of information, kind of like my buddy who was learning Kung Fu through books, right? I was learning entrepreneurship through podcasts and through videos and through blogs, but I wasn't doing it. I wasn't launching anything. I wasn't putting anything out there. And as you said before, it's like you have to actually publish something. You have to produce something. You have to walk the walk. You have to take at least one step. So it wasn't until I started the podcast until I was actually doing anything, like literally doing something in entrepreneurship. And at that point, for me personally, like the amount of hours I spent doing the researching and the reading and the listening of other people's content, my content consumption has dropped like dramatically. Like 99% of my content consumption has dropped off. How has that affected yours now that you are doing your own thing?
Yeah, mine has dropped off too. I stick to my channel, and I'm very selective of who I listen to and what I read now, and especially with recommendations from friends. I like to save everything. So definitely I come from a research background, and that's my full-time job right now as I build my little side hustle. And you document everything because you need to be able to pull this stuff up later. But if I don't need the blog that my friend gives me at the time, then I'm like, no, this isn't relevant to my current situation, but this could possibly be in the future. You document that, and then you keep chugging along with the relevant information. So it has dropped a lot, and probably one of the hardest things I've run into is recommendations and advice from friends that are in different stages than me, and how to take that information in while also not hurting feelings, not losing those contacts, etc. But also keeping true to what I need in the moment to keep my progress moving forward. But yeah, I would agree. The consumption has dropped off once I realized that a lot of it was wasted time.
Yeah, I think what I got out of your statement there is that at the beginning you have no filters and you're listening and you're watching to pretty much everything, even though most of it has absolutely no relevance to what you're doing because you're not doing anything. So you have no filters to turn things off and say, I'm not listening to this, I'm not listening to that, I'm not reading this, I'm not reading that, unless it's like a style thing. Like, oh, I don't like so-and-so because he has an annoying voice, or I don't like so-and-so because her content is all pink on fluorescent yellow, right? And I can't read it. It's too hard on my eyes. But from a actual how good is the content and will it help me perspective, at least from my end, I was listening to everything and reading everything because I had no filters. I had no direction. So once you got your direction and you started going, it seems like now you're kind of like listening to some friends from a topical level. Hey, thanks for your support. I really appreciate it. But like, I'm not implementing that into my business because it's not relevant to where I'm at right now.
Exactly. I love the filter analogy because that's exactly true. And as you continue to grow within whatever you're trying to do, the filters will develop and you'll start to understand what's important and what's not. And I'm also stealing the filters idea and telling my friends when I talk to them about this later. I think that's awesome.
Go for it.
But yeah, it's exactly that. And that will take time. But that's when you really start getting into your productivity groove, is when you can take information that is extremely relevant to right now and kind of shade out the rest. You may need it later. So sometimes documenting, like taking a little bit of time to be like, okay, that's possibly a future concept store. But that's when you start to really hit the channel, is when, exactly like I said before, it is shading out what's not necessary and moving forward what's 100% necessary to you right now.
I love that visual of shading it out, because you're not deleting it, right? You're not removing it. You're just like, I'm focused on these bright white spots right here in front of me. Like, this is important, and everything else I'm just kind of tone it down, right? I'm gonna put some shade on it so that it's not right here in front of me, and I'm focused on it. I can focus on the things that are most important. I heard a phrase recently, I can't remember where I heard it, but they called it just-in-time learning, as opposed to, I forgot what the opposed to was, but the opposed to is just like you're learning everything for the sake of learning it, and just-in-time learning, just-in-time education is like, I need this thing because I'm trying to launch my first webinar. So now I want to study like how to launch your first webinar, as opposed to just like, oh, what's Pat Flynn doing? What's John Lee Dumas doing? What's, Jeff Walker doing? What's Nate Lieberman doing? What are all these guys doing? And just kind of listening for what's going to inspire me. Now I'm looking for what's the thing that I need to do this week.
Right. Yeah. And another thing, what John Lee Dumas says a lot is, would you rather go into 1,000 topics, like 2 inches, or would you rather dive into one topic and go a mile deep and learn everything about it? And usually that one topic is the key to moving forward.
Cool, man. Well, let's jump into the mile deep of what Nathan Lieberman has going on in just a moment. But first, we'll take a quick break and thank our sponsors. Is your website ugly? I mean, really ugly? Did your website fall out of the ugly source code repo and hit every branch on the way down? Is your website so ugly that Apple won't display it in Safari due to their human interface guidelines? Is your website so ugly that your CSS has no style? Is your website so ugly that even your mama won't bookmark it? I know a lot about ugly websites because, sadly, I've been building them my entire career. I've always made excuses like, it should be the functionality over the design. But what I should have been saying all along is, look, I'm colorblind, I'm style challenged, and I have no business building web front ends whatsoever. Luckily, I've worked with some amazing designers that have helped turn my MVP OS, or minimum viable piece of into websites that real humans want to use. And it's not just about complementary colors and rad logo designs. It's about connecting with your website visitors on an emotional level that engages the stickiness centers in their brain and makes them more curious to read about your products and then follow your call to actions. I invite you to check out the awesome tips that website designer Veronica Kieran gave me for the Hello Tech Pros website and get your free personalized website makeover consultation video by visiting HelloUglySite.com. Hello Ugly Site is definitely ugly, but your website doesn't have to be. Go to HelloUglySite.com. That's HelloUglySite.com. Since publishing episode 141 on how social anxiety disorder and depression nearly cost me my life, I've gotten tons of feedback from people who are struggling with similar issues. Anxiety is a big deal. In my opinion, it's not discussed enough, especially in the tech industry, where a lot of us hide from our anxieties behind the computer screen instead of learning how to address them. That's why I started writing a book on the subject. If you are struggling with anxiety or know someone who is, please visit anxietynerd.com. You can sign up to read Chapter 1 for free, as well as receive regular progress details so that you can hold me accountable to get this book published. anxietynerd.com. Okay, we're back with Nathan Lieberman. Nate is a podcaster at Oyster World Radio, and he is broadcasting his escape from the corporate grind. We've been talking to Nate about how to be productive. First of all, just getting started. Like, you have to start walking. You have to start taking that first step in whatever venture you're doing. You can't just learn from the sidelines, learn that book learning right out of the book. Yep. You have to actually have that hands-on learning as well. And so we've been talking to Nate about that. So Nate, as you are building Oyster World Radio and all the other stuff that's going on, you have pulled together all of these experience from other parts of your life. Now, right before the break, you mentioned how John Lee Dumas had mentioned or had referred to the concept of either go an inch deep and a mile wide, or an inch wide and a mile deep, right? So where are you an inch deep and a mile wide, and where are you kind of scattered? Are you one or the other, or are you kind of like trying to find your focus?
So especially right now, over the last couple of years, I've really studied myself. And I really recommend everyone doing this, because everyone is completely different in how they work. But you need to find kind of like how I lost my train of thought. Can you repeat the question one more time?
Yeah, so
I had a good thought and I lost it.
Yeah, no worries. I'm doing the same thing right now.
Dang it.
Yeah. So, right before the break, you had mentioned how John Lee Dumas had taught, you can either be an inch wide and a mile deep to get really, really focused on one specific problem, or you can be an inch deep and a mile wide, meaning that you can do a little bit of work on a lot of different topics. So for instance, in my case, when I started Hello Tech Pros, I didn't know exactly where I wanted to go with this. And to be quite honest, this podcast is not an inch deep and a mile wide. It's very, very broad, right? And so there's many people, myself included, who are thinking, you know what, this podcast is probably too broad, because every day of the week, it's not the same thing, right? We jump from motivation to productivity to leadership to technology and on and on. So who is the audience and what type of, what are we trying to learn here, right? So I am in the process of kind of narrowing it down and getting very specific onto the anxieties that I faced in building my career and building my business, and that's who I'm helping out. And so my focus is now shifting from an inch deep and a mile wide to hopefully someday soon, right, an inch wide and a mile deep, if I can say that. So where are you at in your journey of figuring out where your focuses are?
Yeah, so I recommend everyone to kind of maybe not do exactly what because everyone's different, but really focus on yourself and how you operate. So over the last couple of years, I've really took a deep look at myself and how I just move about the world and how I get things done. And I've noticed that I have a foundation that I need to not only be happy, but be very productive and get things moving along. So for me, I've narrowed it down to there's 4 different aspects of my life that I think are extremely crucial to my success. And that's like my work life, my fitness and health life, my social life, and sleep. And sleep, I think, is one of the most important pieces of the foundation. But so other than that, I've really found a ways to get rid of and cut the fat out of what doesn't work in my foundation. So things like Netflix, that helped fuel my anxiety and procrastination, I've gotten rid of. So I don't have any accounts anymore. Or if I'm working on the wrong project, I got to look at like what my priorities are in my work life and then trim the fat there. Okay, this project's not going to work for me. And that's how I've really started to focus in, because same for you. When you first start out, you don't exactly know where you want to go. And that's in all 4 of those categories. And work, coming out of college, I was a mechanical engineer, which is a super broad term. You could go anywhere from manufacturing to design work, and you have to focus in. Or fitness and health. There's so many different things out there, from CrossFit to just from sports, intramural sports, to conventional weightlifting and powerlifting, to martial arts, and having to focus in there and really analyze what you need and trim the fat. So you can't do Olympic lifting 6 times a week and martial arts 6 times a week. It's just impossible. And it took me years of experimentation and really being honest with myself and cutting out the things that didn't match my personal foundation that has kept that core part in balance and helped propel those core things. And the things that you focus on, those are the ones that you really, really move forward in, instead of trying to move forward with this like 100 different things and topics. If you narrow it down and slowly be honest with yourself and cut away the things that don't matter, those are the ones that are going to explode and move forward for you with the greatest momentum.
I love it. I love this procedure of really studying yourself, as you said, like studying yourself and figure out how you operate so that you can come up with your own foundation of like what makes you tick, like what makes Chad tick, what makes Nathan tick, what makes our audience tick on an individual level, and not just like, hey, I'm all about integrity and communication and hard work and family, right? But what's the one or two or four
those
things
are
that's
so ambiguous terms. What does that even mean?
Right. So how do we get
don't really have a clear
specific?
definition. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so what's your process? Like if you're going to talk to our audience right now and say, hey, like here's the process of how you can study yourself. Like maybe just in the next few minutes, like here's what you can do to really narrow down those broad, ambiguous topics into the things that you're actually the most passionate about, that's going to drive you forward the furthest in your career or in your business.
Right. So there's a couple of processes that I really like. And I think the foundation for each of these steps would be journaling. Something about writing. And once again, this is for me. I like to handwrite. People like to use Evernote. It depends on who you are. But I really recommend writing, because the thing about the English language is we have to take thoughts in our heads that are kind of convoluted and confusing, and then put them into sentences, structured sentences that make sense. Mm-hmm. So it helps you kind of write your thoughts down, and then you can read them too later and be like, oh, okay, so this is how I was feeling during this situation. And I like to use a lot of the design principles that I learned through mechanical engineering, and I've crossed that over into lifestyle design. So really the five major aspects of design is problem definition, conceptualization, research, design, and prototyping. Mm-hmm. So when you go about an experiment in your life, so for a big one for me that I just completed is I ranked up in my martial arts training in my Muay Thai and ran a marathon at the same time. So it was a big physical feat, and extreme distance and then sprint training at the same time.
Wow.
So that was the problem. So how do I balance the two? And then the next is conceptualization. So you start thinking about, you use your journal to list your priorities. And with the priorities, you have to balance out the other four aspects of your foundation. So this is a big challenge that I'm focusing on right now. So what does my work have to look like? What does my social life have to look like? What does my sleep have to work like? Balance that out and try to get a theory. So you build your theory, and then you start researching. From there, what have the top performers done? What do the top Muay Thai experts do to train? What do they do for flexibility? What do they do for recovery? Same for marathon runners. What do they do to recover? What does their training intervals look like? How many days a week? Is there any crossover? So then you kind of test your theory. So this is what could work with my foundation that I've set up. This is the research I have from the top performers. How does that all fit together? Well, that's design. So then you slowly build your life. So to tackle both of these, I had to find the crossover from the research of the two top performers in each of the sports, make that a priority, and then fit in the time to really focus on the things that I really needed to do. So in martial arts and Muay Thai, it was like my round kicks was a big problem, or something that I really needed to improve on. And with that being a priority, I designed a lot of time around that, which also helped my leg strength for marathon training and impact training for running long distances. And then you start to kind of see the magic of it all. Like, wow, this works with that. This works like with that. And get this plan that in 7 days a week, you can be a top of your game sprinter and marathon runner at the same time. And then you start doing it. The very crucial step of, now you have the design. Now it's the prototype. You got to make it real. So then you test it. Okay, this doesn't work. This doesn't work. And iterate that process over and over and over again. And that's the time commitment that you need to really make a lifestyle design that works for you. But once you start iterating, that's when it starts to get fun, because then you start seeing, this isn't important, trim that fat. Oh, this is important to me, trim that fat. In your journal, you can write down, oh, I wasn't feeling good when this happened. Maybe I need more work here. Oh, I wasn't feeling good, or I was feeling really great when I was doing this. Maybe I can spend some of that time over here where I need it most. And then all of a sudden, you're at the finish line of a marathon saying, how the hell did I just do that in one weekend? So once again, for all your listeners, using the design process, and I'm actually surprised that a lot of people don't use, especially a lot of tech people, can apply the things that they learn in the tech world to their own lives. It's not different. You're from building a product to building your life does have the same principles. You define your problem, create concepts, prioritize, know the things that you need to get done, do your research, find out what you need to do to get your goals, design your life around the foundation that you've built, make it happen, bring it into reality, and then iterate, and you can do anything. You can literally do anything.
Boom! My mind is exploded, dude. This is absolutely amazing stuff. I'm being real hard on myself right now because I wish we would have cut out all the chit chat at the beginning and like dove directly into this stuff and given you like a full hour on this. Maybe we're gonna have to bring you back, Nate, on another episode on either People Friday or Entrepreneurship Saturday or Tech Thursday or whatever to dive way deep in the weeds of this. But I love what you're talking about here, how to use the design process of engineering to enhance your lifestyle. And it really starts with that, studying yourself, find out what you like about yourself, what you don't like about yourself, and not like, oh, I'm too fat or, oh, I want to be smarter or whatever, but just like, what's the core things that really drive you and you're passionate about, like you want to own and dominate in your life, like you super, super care about, and then use that design methodology, that engineering process to really break it down into, this roadmap of what do I need to do? Like, how do I, what's the problem definition? How do I conceptualize it? Do the research, the design, the prototype, and all of those steps in order to really, in whatever goal that you have in your life, like you said, like if you break it down into that process, like you can achieve it.
You nailed it, Chad. And it's amazing what people can do. When they take the time to truly find what's important to them and then build themselves the structure of their lives, so it's impossible to fail. It's impossible to fail.
Awesome. That sounds like really good words of wisdom. If you want to, I'll let you use that for your final words of wisdom, or if you've got others, feel free to drop it in here, man. Your final words of wisdom that you have for the audience, the best way that we can connect with you, and then we'll say goodbye.
All right. Well, for my final words of wisdom, well, first of all, Chad, thanks for having me on. I love what you're doing. Keep it up. You're an amazing person. And then my final words of wisdom is this process seems at the surface level like pretty straightforward. It's definitely not. There's going to be lots of roadblocks along the way. Just like if you're designing a product, there are things that happen all the time and lots of fires you need to put out. And the one thing that I can say that really helped me is really, really be disciplined. Discipline is the key that drives this whole engine. Don't rely on motivation. I've made that mistake before, but motivation is fleeting. When those days when you don't want to get up and go run, or you don't want to write that code and you just want to sit and watch Netflix, have discipline be the driver and not motivation. And that will make this whole system turn.
Dude, love it. Where can we find you? Online, on your podcast, on social media, all that good stuff?
All right, well, you can find me, check out my website. It's oysteryourworld.com. We are setting up a really great email list for you guys coming up in the next couple weeks, where we get to send you a daily daydream, or a place that we're dreaming of visiting one day with all of the details. So keep an eye out for that. But follow me on Twitter at Nathan Oyster, or check out the podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Google Play, all of the major podcasting centers. Subscribe to the show to keep update on what we're doing. And if you have any questions, just email me at nathan@oysterworld.com. I'd be glad to help out anyone with any of their questions.
Nathan, thank you so much for joining me on Hello Tech Pros today. Dude, I really value this. It's not, like we said earlier in the show, it's not just about productivity for the sake of like marking things off on my to-do list, right? But it's really about developing that lifestyle that I want to have because I want to have it. And now what are the things that I need to do to maximize on, and what are the things that I need to do to trim the fat on in order to like achieve that and make that lifestyle happen. So thank you for coming on the show and sharing that with us.
Chad, thank you so much for having me. I can't wait to talk with you further, and thank you, your audience, for listening.
Awesome. Tech Pros, if you are looking for that first step and you're worried about failing, if you're worried about what if I walk down here 20 steps from now, 10,000 steps from now, and I turn into a complete failure. Well, first of all, you're not a complete failure because you have walked those steps. You have tried to achieve that marathon. Even if you broke down in the first 10K and like blew out your knee, you still did something that you couldn't have done before. You got to get out there and start working on it, start running on it. And if you have anxiety and fears and just really stressed out about success or failure or anything in between, I feel you. I can resonate with that. I have suffered with social anxiety disorder my entire life. I've had lots and lots of different types of anxiety that I've dealt with and tried to overcome, and completely failed trying to overcome in many circumstances. I'm actually writing a book on the subject, and I would love to get your thoughts and your input, and maybe I can inspire you in some way or another. If you go to, not Hello Tech Pros, if you go to anxietynerd.com, I think this might be the first time I'm name dropping that URL as I'm just getting it out there. anxietynerd.com. Check out the story that's there, and then if it looks like it's something you're interested in, then there's a sign up to get more of the chapters as I'm writing it. And I would love to hear your feedback. Again, thanks Nathan Lieberman for joining me on the show. You've been listening to Nate Lieberman, and I'm Chad Bostic. And until next time, take care. The show notes page for this episode can be found at hellotechpros.com/226. Do you use Slack for team communication? Join the Hello Tech Pros Slack channel at hellotechpros.com/Slack. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review, subscribe to this channel, and check back tomorrow. This has been Productivity Tuesday, but tomorrow my featured guest and I are talking about leadership. Thursday, technology. Friday, people in communication. Saturday, entrepreneurship. Sunday, being unplugged. Monday, motivation. And then we do it all over again next Tuesday for productivity. And I'll talk to you tomorrow.